Thanks for joining us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We have a lot lined up for you today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Korea's consumer price growth sits below the 1% mark for the 10th straight month, while its current account surplus also inches down in August amid falling imports and exports. What stories made headlines in global business news this week? A years-long patent war between Google and Microsoft comes to a close, while Volkswagen's U.S. sales take a hit on the heels of its emissions scandal. Korea logged a current account surplus for the 42nd consecutive month in August. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday shows that the surplus came to $8.5 billion. Now, this is $800 million less than the $9.3 billion surplus recorded in July. The on-month decline was attributed to a fall in the balance of goods, which narrowed over the cited period. In August, both exports and imports continue to contract from the previous year. Exports dropped nearly 12% on year, while imports plunged 17.7%. And we move on to Korea's consumer price growth, which remained in the 0% range for the 10th consecutive month in September due to falling global oil prices. Our Kwon So-ah has more.
At 110.04, Korea's consumer price index rose by 0.6% in September from the same month a year ago. According to Statistics Korea Friday, it's the 10th straight month the country has posted growth in the 0% range since December's 0.8% rise, keeping concerns alive that the nation is on a deflationary track. Low global oil prices are seen as the main culprit of sluggish growth in domestic prices. Oil product prices plummeted almost 19% on year, influencing gas, electricity, and water prices, which fell by almost 10%. But the largest effects were seen in the first 6 months of the year, with numbers slightly bouncing back in the second half.
Because global oil prices began to plunge significantly in the fourth quarter of last year, we're seeing an improvement in consumer prices in the second half of this year as a base effect is appearing.
And when it comes to core inflation, prices that exclude the oil and food sectors, a growth of 2.1% was posted in September, remaining the same as August. Service prices rose similarly by 2% on year due to higher public transportation fees, and the housing market saw increases as well. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance said Thursday the government will closely monitor global oil prices and weather conditions for the remainder of the year and focus on managing prices closely related to daily spending, such as food, energy, medical services, education, and housing. Kwon So-ah, Business Daily.
And as Korea's household debt continues to swell, we're now seeing a slight increase in the delinquency rate for loans extended by local banks. The Financial Supervisory Service said that outstanding household debt rose by $6.7 billion in August to stand at $454.6 billion. The agency says record low interest rates have stimulated the local housing market. The average household delinquency rate was at 0.46% as of the end of August, up 0.02 percentage points from a month earlier. Three consortia led by 2 IT firms and 1 major telecom company have applied for a preliminary license to launch Korea's first internet Oni Bank. The Financial Services Commission said consortia led by KT, Kakao, and Interpark are the final contenders in the race, while the 500-volt consortium did not apply, although many had expected it to. The financial regulator said it will give a preliminary license in December to 1 or 2 bidders after evaluating them on their business plans, capital, shareholders, and infrastructure. The final license will be handed out sometime next year. Korean auto giants Hyundai and Kia Motors combined sales in the U.S. jumped nearly 18% on year in September. thanks to strong demand for their recreational vehicle models. Industry data show that Hyundai sold over 64,000 cars in the U.S. last month, up 14.3% on year, while Kia sales rose by 22.6% to nearly 50,000 units. This boost is attributed to the rising demand for their RV models like the Tucson, Sorento, and Carnival. Meanwhile, the two automakers also ranked second for the first time in premium sedan sales in the U.S. in August, overtaking Lexus and BMW. A combined 571 Hyundai Ecus and Kia K9 models were sold in that month, trailing behind Mercedes-Benz, which sold over 2,000 units of its S-Class premium model. Korean tech giant LG has unveiled a brand new flagship smartphone called the V10. It's equipped with dual front-facing cameras that offer both standard and wide-angle lenses for group selfies. It also comes with the world's first second screen at the top of the phone, which will display the time, date, weather, and battery level even when the main screen is off. It's the beginning of a new series of phones for LG, and experts predict it may help boost the company's flagging sales as it struggles to compete against increased competition from China. The V10 will be released in Korea this month and then reach the U.S. and China soon after. It's expected to cost roughly $680. Many people here in Korea are still struggling to find an affordable place to live. And with hopes of finding a solution to this growing housing problem, the government has been pushing for a public housing project called New Stay. But with little recognition from the public, this project has yet to prove to be effective. Our Lee Ju-young tells us more.
This is one of the model houses for the government's public housing project called New Stay, which is a collaboration between the government and private construction companies. The aim is to build public apartment units for middle-class households struggling to find affordable lump sum deposit 전세 properties and offer more stability for people relying on rentals. It eventually aspires to change the paradigm of the country's housing culture by starting with providing 60,000 apartments for rent by 2017.
They have fixed deposits and affordable rents, so demand will be high from young people who don't have large chunks of money.
Despite these expectations, a survey by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport on some 2,500 people aged 30 to 50 shows the government may face challenges in reaching its goals. Only 28.2% of those surveyed said they were aware of the New Stay project. When asked if they would be interested in moving into one of these public units, more than half said they had no intention to. In order to help boost recognition of the still young project introduced back in January, the government said it will carry out qualitative analyses on the individuals who participated in the survey throughout October. By doing so, it hopes to draw up measures that best fit the lifestyle and convenience of potential tenants to help spur more interest. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
Time now for a look through some of the global business stories that made headlines this week. And for that, we turn to our Eunice Kim in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hi, June. Well, let's get straight to it, shall we? Negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership have been extended after talks kicked off on Thursday in Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S. Reports say trade ministers from 12 countries representing 40% of the global economy were very close to an agreement on what would be the world's largest free trade pact, if passed. While there was no official announcement from the closed-door meeting, sources involved in the talks say 2 to 3 sticking points remain. Among them is believed to be America's push to extend patent protection for biologic drugs from 5 to 8 years, a motion that has faced stiff resistance on concerns this will make medicines less accessible to poorer nations and raise prices in general. The trade deal of Pacific Rim nations that excludes China and Korea has been under negotiation for more than 5 years. New PMI, or Purchasing Managers Index, figures out show that China's massive manufacturing sector was down for a second straight month in September. Keep in mind, a reading below 50 points is a contraction, and above 50 points points to an expansion. Now, both figures from the government, which focuses on large state-owned enterprises, and those from a private market survey, which follows smaller and medium-sized companies, registered figures below 50 at 49.8 and 47.2, respectively. Markets said companies cut factory activity at the fastest pace in 6.5 years amid sharp falls in new export businesses. The world's second largest economy registered a 5.5% fall in exports in August. And have they agreed to get along? Google and Microsoft have ended their 5-year fight over technology patents related to smartphones and Microsoft's Xbox video gaming system. Among the outstanding lawsuits were those Google took on when it acquired Motorola Mobility in 2011. While the details of the agreement were left under wraps on Thursday, their joint statement stated Google and Microsoft would drop all pending patent infringement litigation between them and collaborate on certain patent matters, keeping the door open for future projects in the interest of their customers. With the pact, 18 lawsuits in the U.S. and Germany become null and void. It follows a similar move between arch rivals Samsung and Apple, who dropped their patent disputes outside of the U.S.
And of course, on to the latest on that Volkswagen scandal. The Environment Ministry here in Korea has begun emissions testing, and Volkswagen Korea has apparently notified the government that it may recall 120,000 vehicles here in Korea.
That's right. And yeah, many eyes on those investigations within this country, within Volkswagen, and of course beyond. Be it a recall or a sales suspension, Seoul had said it will make a move by November, but this just out, VW Supervisory Board says it anticipates it will take months to complete its in-house probe. Here's a wrap.
Late Wednesday, local time, Volkswagen Supervisory Board gathered to review preliminary results of an in-house probe on how and why Europe's largest car maker was caught in the deep end of a diesel emissions cheating scandal that has since wiped out a third of its share price and clobbered its shining global reputation. After a 7-hour meeting, the board said it expects its investigation will take at least several months and proposed canceling next week's shareholder meeting until more information is made available. Earlier in the week, Volkswagen had said it would release more on recall plans of its cars equipped with the defeat device software soon, adding the vehicles were still technically safe and roadworthy. The 11 million cars under the Volkswagen umbrella breaks down like this, with more than half being its namesake brand. Germany is believed to have 2.8 million of the affected cars, the UK 1.2 million, and France nearly 1 million.
It is crucial that something like this never happens again at Volkswagen. Therefore, we will introduce even stricter governance and compliance standards. I insist on that.
Germany's largest company will also tighten its belt. A hiring freeze is in place at its financing business, and one of its shifts at a German engine factory has been cut. Just the start of a sea of changes as it prepares to face astronomical expenses in the biggest crisis of its 78-year history, while trying to avoid a painful downgrade in its credit rating.
Man, what a mess for Volkswagen. But then we know that the group has set aside 6.5 billion euros, or that's about $7.2 billion, to deal with this whole mess. But then experts are saying that this is not enough at all.
Nowhere near enough. In fact, German Daily Bild had auto experts saying that the actual cost could become even bigger, 10 times that, 65 billion euros or 72 billion US dollars. That is about 5 times Volkswagen Group's group's operating profit last year. And the repercussions are very much flooding in. In U.S. courts alone, we're already seeing some 89 federal lawsuits filed by drivers. The Texan city of Houston has sued Volkswagen America for spewing dangerous chemicals into its air, and a magazine has stripped the German carmaker of 2 of its Green Car of the Year awards.
And we should also mention that German prosecutors have made a correction on the probe surrounding the outgoing VW CEO Winterkorn.
Right. Those prosecutors earlier this week had said a preliminary investigation was launched on Martin Winterkorn. He, of course, did resign following that admission from Volkswagen of its cheating scandal. Now, the latest press release from prosecutors said an administrative error had led to incorrect information going on to say Winterkorn was in fact not a suspect in their probe, as it is still a general probe. If found guilty of fraud, though, Volkswagen executives could face as much as 10 years in jail.
Wow, a very fluid story with a lot of global implications,
yeah,
right?
Very much developing.
All right, we'll keep an eye on this. Thanks so much for coming in today, Eunice.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with more business news that matters to you. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.